Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the farm. Harvest is still in full swing, but we've got a little break this morning on a Sunday because the elevator doesn't run during church hours. So we're not starting today till noon. So I thought I would get a project I've been wanting to get done around the homestead done this morning while I got a break. So come along and we'll get her done. We had an absolutely gorgeous Nebraska sunshine this morning while I was sitting in my chair looking out the front window. But this morning we are back on our Farmall Cub. Got our coffee going. But let's bring you up to speed to where we're at. We got the tires on the front, which you remember. And while we had the tires and rims off, we did some painting on the spindles. And then we got those tires mounted and got them put back on the tractor. And then we've got the rear tires and wheels off. And while we had those off, I thought I would take advantage of all of the clearance and having things out of the way and get the rear of the tractor painted. There's some dust on it because we've done that about 5-6 days ago. So now we have the rear tires back. They've been mounted. We cleaned up and painted the rims and the wheel centers. So we're able to make this thing a roller so we can get it into the shop. I've been wanting to get it into the shop before the weather hits, and we can work on it in the shop. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to get the wheels all put together, and then we'll get this thing jacked up, put our wheels on, and get other pieces we can throw on here real quick and get this thing rolled into the shop finally. Here is our brand new BKT tires, and we put them on our painted up rims. We've got those all cleaned up and got all the scale and the rust off of them and got them painted, primed and painted. So these are 8.3 by 24 tires. There's a 24-inch rim. You can put up to 9-inch tires on these. There's people that do that, but we wanted to go with a narrow, kind of more traditional type tire. Now, we still have to put the wheel centers in, which we also have painted, primed and painted. Here they are over here. So we're going to get those installed right now. I'm going to go get the tractor so I can pick the tires up off the ground and work at a little bit better height. Got to let the guineas out this morning. Ruby's a little too close. Come on, Ruby. Come on out, boys and girls. Also notice that our tangerine sky rose out here is putting some more buds off here in the fall. The climbing rose, we're going to have it climb up the windmill tower here a little bit. Should be cool looking. Okay, we got our tire elevated so we can work on it. The color on the outer rim of the wheel is supposed to be an argent silver. That's the name of the color. Or they were hot dip galvanized back in the day. We found a color that was called aluminum oxide was the closest we could get. And then of course the centers are the classic Farmall red. So we've opted to put our valve stem facing out so there's easier access, and then our wheel center, we're going to dish it in on the tractor, but there's different adjustments that you can do on these wheels. You can see that the square body here is offset from the center, so you can turn your wheels around to where your spacing is different on your wheels. You can also put your wheel center on this side or on this side. You can dish it in, you can dish it out. So there's about 6 different variations that you could do to get various widths on your tractor depending on what the row spacing was back in the day. So the tires would go down the furrow of the rows depending on what row spacing they were using. But this tractor is not going to be used for farming. It's basically going to be a parade tractor. I want to dish the wheels in, which will make the tires out a little bit wider for better stability. So we're going to put our wheel centers on top of these connections here, because I don't want these connections to show. If we were to put the wheel centers under here, these would show. So the only thing that's going to show now is the nut and the bolt sticking through here. And then we'll get those painted up if need be later. If not, we'll leave them as is. So let's get these wheel centers put in. You can see that these connection points have these little spacers here. So your wheel center sits down here and then tight against that. It's a pretty tight fit. These are kind of tapered. So as you tighten the wheel center, it'll go down and lock in flush down here onto this square area here. We may have to give it a little tap to get it to set in. So let's go get our centers. There's our wheel center in place. We just use our little t-shirt shop rag and put on those, and then just tap them with our dead blow hammer to seat those in place. It's a nice snug fit. So now let's go find the bolts that go in this. Here's our wheel center bolts. You can see they have the square head on the back, which fits in the square socket. So you don't need a wrench on the back side. And then you just have the nut on the top side. So we're going to take these over on the wire wheel and clean these up, and then we'll get them installed. Alright, got our bolts cleaned up. It's amazing what a wire wheel will do for your old rusty bolts. Cleans them up really nice. Now, a lot of bolts that are just standard, you could just go buy new bolts if you wanted to, but if you're a purist Farmall restore person, all your Farmall bolts are going to have that little round kind of raised area on top of the head of your bolt. And if people are really concerned about that, they will notice if it's not a Farmall bolt, because it won't have this little round piece here on the head. But it's your tractor. Do what you want to do. Now these are kind of specialty bolts, the big square head bolts, so I don't know if you could find those new other than going to an old tractor parts supplier. So we're going to put these in there. These square heads, like I said, just slip up into those sockets underneath. And these did not have lock washers when they came off, so I'm assuming they don't get them. And with the finer thread bolts, a lot of times you don't need lock washers because they don't come loose as easy. So let's get these going. Now on these nuts, you'll see the top of them have kind of a rounded shoulder and the bottom have a flat face. You want that flat face to go down against your dish here and keep the rounded area up. Now these are 1/2 inch bolts, so they got a 3/4 head on them. So we're just using our regular box end wrench. I don't want to use an impact and scar up all of our paint. And these don't need a super amount of torque on them, especially because they're fine thread. So just snug them up real nice and they're good to go. Okay, got her all snugged up and ready to go. Next thing we need to address are these rusty old lug nuts or lug bolts. So we're going to clean these up on the wire wheel just like we did those others. We'll spare you the boring content there. Got all of our lug bolts cleaned up, ready to go. Next thing I want to do before we bring the tires over here is I want to chase these threads in our hub with the tap real quick. Make sure there's no bunged up threads in there that are going to get cross threaded. All right, we're ready to rock. Let's get the tire over here. We'll get this thing jacked up and get our first tire on. We got to do the right side of the tractor first because our tires are directional. When they mount them exactly opposite to where the tread's going in the right direction. And you want to be careful when you got everything off the tractor like this, the tires. The tractor wants to get a little tippy because the front axle swivels, and we're kind of top heavy here with all the stuff, the motor and everything. So the tire or the tractor wants to tip that way very easily. So when we stripped all that off, we added our little strap here from our headlight bolt down to the steering axle, and that keeps the tractor from tipping over. Now once we get this tire on here, there'll be enough weight out here to where we can remove this strap and we don't have to worry about it. The other thing that you want to do is when you set everything up, you want to make to where there's a lug hole directly vertical on the top, because as you get going the weight's going to hang on that bolt, and if it were off to the side one way or the other it would make it a little more difficult. So we made sure our hub had a bolt hole straight up and down, and then we've got our tire to where there's a hole on the top. So we're going to go get a bar and we'll start putting our lug nuts in. We've got the jacked up to where our hub's just a little bit above our hole in our center. Now I'm going to share with you a little tip that I've shared with you before, a trucker's tip. If you get your bar and you put your bar up underneath the front of the tire as far as it'll go, use your bar as leverage to lift your tire up a little bit. That way you're not having to muscle that tire around and try to hold it up. You can get that thing up onto the lug nuts, and you can even move the bar around a little bit to get your tire to spin a little bit. It really saves your back. All right, there she is. She's all on. Starting to look pretty cool. Now you notice I really didn't wrench down real hard on those lug bolts. This thing's going to spend 99% of its life going 3 miles an hour, so it's not real imperative that we torque those down crazy hard. So we're going to get now over to our other tire and repeat all of these same processes. We'll get that done. I wore one of my favorite shirts today. I don't want to, I don't have to. You can't make me because I'm retired. So you might think I'm crazy for doing all these processes separately on this project like this. Why don't I just get everything ready to go for both of these tires and get them mounted at the same time and everything like that? I find that if I break it up and only do what I need as I need it, like wire wheeling the bolts and stuff like that, the tedious processes aren't as tedious. And also wire wheeling those bolts and stuff like that, my hands get tired after a while. And once your hand gets tired, you're more apt to have an accident or something's going to slip. So I just do it as needed. Let me know how you do projects like this, whether you like to do it just a piece at a time or get everything ready and just go bomb this thing together. Now I know some of you people are going to scream at me for using gloves with power tools. Sometimes it's not a good idea. But on a wire wheel like this, I'd rather have the wire wheel nick the knuckle on my glove than nick my actual knuckle. Now, there's certain things that you just can't do with pliers or tongs, which I know is going to be your suggestion. But if you grab onto these threads with pliers, it's going to screw these threads up. So when I'm doing the heads of the bolts, I will hold this in my hand, my gloved hand, to do the outside edges out here. And then these inside edges will be done when I actually do the threads, when I actually can hang on to this bolt head with my pliers. Now, everybody knows that taking shop when you were in high school, your shop teacher says safety first, which that should be the first thing in your thought process. But in actual work, sometimes safety comes second or third because of just out of necessity. So just be as careful as you can. Anybody that knows using a wire wheel, it's all about pressure and angles when you're using it to be safe. And this is such a fine wire wheel that's probably not going to catch my gloves, unlike a drill bit over in the drill press would catch it, hold it, and wrap your arm up. Got our second wheel on. You can see that the paint gets bunged up a little bit, like right here where it goes over the top of the hub. I've got some little arts and crafts brushes I'll come back through. We'll fix all that paint. We'll even paint the outer portion of the wheel lugs here. You definitely want to stay up on the corrosion control. If you let something like that rust, the rust will start continuing underneath the paint that's adjacent to it, and all your paint will start peeling up. So anytime you've got some exposed metal anywhere, make sure you get some paint on it, and it'll save you a lot of headaches in the future. Now, if you remember, our front tires were missing lug studs. There was 2 of them missing. We've ordered those and they've come in, so we're going to put those in right now. Now, if we decide to put these wheel weights back onto the tractor, and most likely we will, those can be mounted either on the inside or outside of the rim. You just turn them around. So when and if we do that, we'll still be able to apply those without removing the tires. All right, folks, we are off the jacks and we are a roller again. We've been waiting for this day since we got this tractor to be able to move it around, because if you remember, we had 3 tires that wouldn't hold any air at all, and the tire that was on this side was all weather checked and wouldn't be long before it would fail too. Now you can see back here in the back, we had the jack stands underneath our drawbar connection here. So we have an area here that we couldn't paint very well. So once we get this inside, we'll remove this drawbar, and then we can prime and paint, or prepare, prime, and paint these rear areas on the final drive. And then also the check plug for the final drive. On your right side, it's not obstructed, but on your left side, it's right here down in behind this bracket. So to check the oil in your final drive while we have these brackets off, we can do that. And then we'll also prep, prime, and paint all of our drawbar here. We're also going to make a receiver tube welded on a plate that we can bolt onto our drawbar so we can pull a trailer like in a parade. We'll make that also. So now that this is a roller, we got to be able to steer. So I'm going to put the steering wheel back on. Yes. All right, folks, let's get this baby in the shop. Boy, is she starting to look pretty. Speaking of pretty, I need to go get Kelly to help me get the tractor over this little hump here in the door. There she is, all safe and snug as a bug in a rug. So the next order of business is to get all of our smalls, get them cleaned up and painted and reinstalled on the rear of the tractor. We have our fenders. We even got some new parts that won't go on for a while. We've got a new grill. We've got a flapper to go on our exhaust pipe. And then once we get the rear deck reinstalled, we'll start working on getting this thing running. I'll strip all the sheet metal off of this thing because if you're toying with the engine, it's a lot easier to not have that sheet metal on there. And it's not necessary to start the tractor. And then we'll just use a temporary fuel tank, a little fuel jug to supply fuel to the carburetor. All right, folks, we hope you're enjoying our little Farmall Cub restoration project. Some people would not call it restoration. Some people would call it a refurbish. True restoration people would blow this thing apart down to the individual bolt and put it all back together one by one. I don't want to go to that extent. I just want it to run good and look good. So if you enjoy our content, share it with your like-minded friends and give us a thumbs up on there. We got harvest to go do. It's time. I got to go make my lunch and get out of here. So till next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Come back and see us here on Markelly Farm. We got a lot more to do. Well, Ruby, what do you think? You want to be Pigpen or the rubber duck? The way you like to roll around and stuff, I think we need to call you Pigpen.